All right, it is sometime during Christmas break, sometime between the time where you probably stopped working and probably should be working, or hopefully somewhere in between. But we're with you every morning along the way anyway. Normally at 9 a.m. Eastern, our core agent partners participate in daily training, chance to get together, a chance to call out some numbers, chance to interview each other, and a chance to go over a training topic. But traditionally during the Christmas break, we take a pause on that. But this year we did something different. We decided our Christmas gift to you, our core agent partners, and our gift to you, the insurance industry, is going to be interviews like this. We have Paul Granen on today. We spoke to John Kite, Eric Hamadi. Adam and I recorded an episode. And Adam, I think we have 2 or 3 more to record today in the process of putting together our Christmas gift to the industry. But today we have Paul Granen from Louisiana. So Paul, introduce yourself to the viewing audience. Let them know where you are, who you are, if they've never heard of you before.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for the invite. My name is Paul Granen, agency owner for Granen Insurance Agency in Metairie, Louisiana, which is a suburb of New Orleans. We were right outside of New Orleans, grew up in New Orleans, and I started my career in this business. Actually, September 11th will be our 10-year anniversary. Been licensed over 10 years. Originally had a property and casualty license in July of 2015, excuse me, and did a short stint with Allstate in a dealer program. Quickly realized that I could not stand being captive. Got my life and health license around the same time. Started my agency September 2015, and quickly realized that it was very difficult to get property and casualty appointments as a scratch agency. So really started focusing a lot more on life insurance. Started out doing final expense, hitting the roads, door knocking, and was fairly successful there. And then quickly was invited to participate in the mortgage protection realm, which is really where, pardon me, allergies around here, really where I spent a good bit of my time in this business, quite a bit. Actually, we opened a physical office in January of 2020, started transitioning from from field sales to telesales. Perfect timing. March, COVID hit. 2020 was my best year ever. 2020 doubled that. 22 was great. And fast forward a little bit. Now, mortgage protection really got very challenging. And I actually got an appointment with Progressive about 3 years ago. A lot of my clients were always asking me about auto insurance and other things. And I figured, well, I have the license. I have an established brick and mortar. Why not take a little dive into that? So started doing a little bit a couple of years ago. And then actually this year, we really started to focus more on that, which is not the norm for a lot, I would say. It's a very hard market right now. But I just felt like I kind of needed to make some changes, diversify, change my direction a little bit to keep monthly income up and that sort of thing. So that's a good bit of where we are right now.
Awesome. Adam, I heard a word there that I hear often, and it's the word diversify. I think we all figure out how to be good at something. We all figure out how to push through that survival mode when we get into the business. And then we figure out that next evolutionary step, which is diversification. And then he also said something I find super interesting, is that we all face challenges. I think some people in this industry, and we talked about this morning, have this fear of failure. They think they're the only one that's ever faced a challenge, but we really all do. Like we wouldn't have gotten 10 years into the business without diversification and overcoming some kind of adversity. So I think those are some interesting points that you brought up. Our first question we want to throw your way is, what do you think some of the biggest successes you experienced were in 2024?
100% would have to be on the personal lines aspect of business. Like I said, I mean, we're still doing other things, still doing Medicare, still doing health insurance, doing some other things. But part of, my goal actually for this year was really to build up my personal lines book. And so, honestly, we're a small agency, so I didn't really have to be perfectly frank, very many auto policies on the books. If I'm being honest, it was around 40, give or take, around, I would say, April of this year. And I decided to, like I said, kind of switch gears a little bit and start buying some auto leads and really kind of ramped it up, use the automation practices I already have in place. And I had a goal that I wanted to get to the next tier with Progressive and then on the way to another. And of course, writing other carriers too, but that's our main carrier. And so in about 4 months, see, May, June, July, August, September, about 5 months, up until right before September. I had a surgery in September. Happy to share if guys want to hear about that. But anyway, basically, in about 5 months, I more than quadrupled my book. So, with other carriers now, I have close to 200 personal auto policies on the books, which again, in the grand scheme of large agencies, that's nothing. But honestly, I'm the only one in here doing it, and still managing the agency and everything else. So for me, that's definitely been a huge success for us.
Adam, do you know how personal auto policies pay? Because I sure don't.
That's funny. I was just wondering the same thing. Thinking about that. Yeah, I have no idea how auto insurance pays. I bet Paul does.
Paul, how does auto insurance pay?
It's definitely not the same as getting an advance on a life policy. I can tell you that right now. Typically, the carriers, some might pay twice a month, but for the most part, most of them pay once a month at different intervals. So whatever you write, basically that's what you're getting paid the next month, and that's going to be whatever your commission level is. Mine vary with different carriers, but just to use an easy math number, let's just say it's 10%. So if you write, let's say $20,000 in personal lines premium, then the next month, and that's $2,000. Plus, of course, whatever renewals and residuals continue to build upon that. So it's definitely not. It's tough. I'm just going to say it. It's not like, well, gee, there's these humongous checks, but you're not really working toward just that next month, so to speak. It's basically you're working toward the renewals. And one of the things is when we get paid, you're getting paid the full, if it's a 6-month policy, it's the full 6 months. And if it's a 12-month policy, which not a whole lot of carriers do, National General does, then it's so if I write a 12-month policy, then that 10%, let's just say, is 10% of the premium for the whole year. So, I'm not getting anything else on that policy until renewal. So it's definitely a long game. It's not a short game, but that was kind of the idea,
Yeah, I think a lot of agents, Adam, get so caught up in the short game. And I don't know if it's the social media era, if it's the MLM philosophy, if it's just that you get into the business and you're desperate to make some money and you have this short game philosophy that you kind of get stuck on. But when do you think, because you've been doing this twice as long as I have, Adam, when did you realize it wasn't just a short game anymore and there was some long-term vision that was needed?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I've never really thought about doing anything else. So, when I first got in the business, I just kind of knew this was going to be it. I've never really thought about like, what if this doesn't work? Or I knew going in, this was just going to be my career, honestly. So yeah, I never really had those sort of thoughts of like, is this going to be a long-term sort of thing? I just kind of went in with that mindset that it was going to be.
Paul, did you find that personal lines and PNC and that stuff became more interesting to you, more exciting, more passionate? Or what kind of inspired you to add that into what you were doing?
Mainly just because, like I said, I had a PNC license before I ever had a life and health license. So I've always had the license. It was really my clients more than anything. And I've never been one to, I know some people say, be really good at like one thing, and that's just not me. If I'm kind of crazy like that. I just, I can usually have my hands involved in multiple things and I like it that way. But I would say the biggest thing initially, besides the changes in the industry and just having to kind of pivot a little bit, really was clients. On a daily basis, I would say, whether it was a lead that I called, whether or not I wrote a life insurance policy or Medicare or whatever, people asking me, hey, by the way, do you do auto insurance? Or, these questions would come about. And initially, like I said, when I first got licensed, property and casualty is very different. It's completely different. For example, if I wanted to bring you in, I can't just like override a downline. It's so much more complicated than that. Even getting appointed in other states, it's not like life and health, way easier. So there wasn't that end of it. For me, it was pure opportunity, and the fact that I was able to get some appointments, being able to help not only my own self, but also friends and family that had asked and other clients, and that's what initially started it. And then obviously this year was more about just focusing on other things besides mortgage protection to kind of build up the residuals and really just have some other avenues of income.
Interesting. Adam, I see it all the time, the mortgage protection craze, the IUL in your underwear phase. And hopefully nobody hates me for saying that, but it's the newest craze. It's all first year commission driven. It's all survival mode driven. It's all, you're going to have to stay on the same hamster wheel because the wheel's going to keep spinning because it's not building anything behind it phase. And I feel for the people that are never going to get ahead because that's all that they're doing, and the power that some type of residual income sells, be it home, auto, or Medicare, makes a big difference in the longevity of somebody's business.
Chris, if I can interrupt you real quick, that brings me to another thought, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I have a lot of friends that their only focus is Medicare. And some of these folks don't even, quite frankly, even know how to write a Medicare supplement, or they don't know enough about supplements. All they do is Advantage plans. And
I did two this week.
Huh?
I did two this week. I wrote two of them, so I know this much of them.
Oh, well, glad to help. I wrote probably supplements before I ever even wrote Advantage. But, when I talk to folks, the thing about the Medicare contracts, I mean, look at WellCare this year. I mean, granted, we don't make tons of money on prescription drug plans, but it's not the point. It's bottom line is I can't even tell you how many people I moved to the $0 WellCare plan, last year, only for the very next year for them to just almost like laugh at us and say, look, we got you, and, I can only imagine. I mean, let's say you are a larger agency and you've got 1,000 PDPs. Well, I mean, it's not life-changing money, but I mean, that's $4,000 a month just snatched away. And so, I hope that does not happen with Medicare Advantage plans anytime soon. However, anytime you've got the government controlling that contract every single year, those are real, in my opinion, concerns. And I tell people all the time, and I mean, I know you, obviously you're the both of y'all are final expense dudes, so I'm sure you're telling other people, hey, make sure that you're talking to your clients about final expense, because at least final expense, like a Medicare supplement contract, and quite frankly, unlike PNC or Advantage, it's a contract. If your contract says that you're going to get 6% renewals for the next 10 years and 2% after that, they can't renege on that contract, whereas Advantage is every year. And I just think, it's another one of those areas where people really need to think about doing other things. Yeah, that would be my advice, because if you're putting all your eggs in one basket and that basket all of a sudden gets ripped from under you, that's a problem.
Speaking of baskets, Adam, I think it's important, as we talked about in a couple episodes ago, to read your contract. If it says in the contract that if your lifetime persistency drops below 65%, and then they can take your renewals away from you, you should know that. And
they can renege on it.
They didn't not necessarily renege, but like pull out the deepest, bottomest sentence in a contract and then use it against you.
I have a good example if you want to hear it.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
It's really small, but I told you that I wrote MedSups first, right? And so one of the carriers that I'm contracted with, when I first started, I was trying to keep expenses down, and I mean, much different place now. But I remember that with a lot of health insurance stuff, your agency had to be contracted in or licensed in addition to you individually in order to collect commissions on that business. Whereas life insurance, there's many states, that you can override agents, and, you don't have to, the agency doesn't have to be licensed. So I was trying to be cheap. This was a long time ago, trying to pinch pennies. And so I changed one of my contracts with one of the med sub carriers from an agency contract to an individual contract. Well, fast forward, everything is agency now. I mean, I'm agency licensed in, I don't know, 30 states or whatever. But, when I look at, I did a little audit and I realized that there was a couple of policies that I hadn't been paid on since 2021. We're not talking about a lot of money. Okay, it's not that big of a deal, but hey, every dollar counts as far as I'm concerned. And if I'm not getting paid, I want to know why. So I called and it was explained to me that because the amount of money paid in a 12-month period went below $600, that I was no longer vested with that company. So I didn't even know it, but that however much money went to my former upline with that company since 2021. I had no idea. I mean, we're only talking like $500, but still, I had no idea. So I'm sure it was in the contract, but I just can't agree with you more. It's like, you got to know, because otherwise one day you'll have a little surprise,
Yeah. Well, I think it's a balancing act too, between, as you said, Adam, when that situation happened and it dug at you for a while, at some point you just have to stop being, so upset about it and go out and make money. I'm not going to put your words in my mouth because you said it far more eloquently, but these little bumps in the road do happen to people. They take $600 a year away from you. They take $3,000 a month away from you. They take away entire carriers away from you. Ironically, I think it's been about a year since they took KSKJ away from independent distribution. And that was very disruptive for a lot of people because they were so singularly focused. Agents that diversify, that are comfortable with multiple products and multiple type of products, it's really hard to kick them off their stool when they're so, well balanced. But when you're so single product focused or single concept focused, it's pretty easy to get knocked over a one-legged stool. Adam, maybe you want to share with Paul how you kind of muscled up and said, that happened to me, but I'm not going to let it hold me back anymore. Or maybe somebody that watched today didn't catch that episode.
Yeah. I mean, I lost some renewals from a carrier that I helped generate about $18 million worth of business with. And because my entire groups of production fell under 65%, they decided that they'd rather keep that money. So yeah, I had, I had quite a bit of renewals taken away from me. And at the end of the day, it's like, I still got to keep working. If anything, I just got to push harder and do what I can to make up that money. But it's a pain. I think the big problem is that there's too many people with these different companies that have never done what we do. They know the products, but they don't understand like what we go through on a regular basis. They don't understand the agent side of the business. And I think that if they listened to people that knew what they were doing a little bit on that side of it, on the sales side of it, they would probably maybe be a little bit further ahead. But sometimes I think egos maybe get in the way. And people are in certain roles and they just think that they know better than anybody else, even though they've never done it themselves. And I'm not talking about one specific carrier. I think there's a lot of carriers like that you have the people that, maybe they got these college degrees in marketing and things like that, but they've never actually sold a policy in their life. Mm-hmm. I think more of them, we've talked about that, Chris, even some of the fraternals, the one we were working with earlier this year, quite a bit, where great product, awesome underwriting, wonderful rates. But then like the second too much business comes in, they start freaking out. And then all of a sudden everybody's on as earned. And it's like, we kind of tried to help you guys a little bit, but if you would have maybe let us help even a little bit more, maybe you wouldn't fallen into that sort of situation.
Yeah, there has to be some kind of connection between the different legs of the stool and not work against each other. Otherwise, that kind of situation happens. Paul, we only have until about the 25-minute mark for today's conversation, but you've sold life, you've sold health, you've sold property and casualty. You're a great person to ask this question to. Is sales or not?
That's a good question. To a degree, I would say yes. As far as, for me personally, I've always thought personality goes a long way. If you can, convey the information to the prospect or the client on the other end, if you can instill trust with them, and if they believe that you have their best interest at heart and that you're actually trying to help them and provide the products in order to protect them, whatever that may be, then I think that part of the process is the same. You didn't ask this, but I will say that I think there's a second part of it, though, as far as sales. One thing that's definitely very different, and I know this, and the larger you get, it's even more so, especially with property and casualty, and maybe even Medicare if you have a lot of DSNPs on the books. But with especially personal lines business, the larger your book gets, the more servicing is involved, and the more penny pinching is involved. And I have to honestly say that that's a part of it that is can be very challenging, because at some point you got to get some help. So it's not quite as what's the word I'm looking for? Cruise control is some of the products, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough talk about when to hire help, what help looks like, where do you find it? Is it VA? Is it a human being? Is it your wife, your kids? An interview I did with Ruben recently, he's moved into a very similar LOA model and has a lot of his family working with him. So that's a great conversation to kind of unpack from people more often. Last one I'll throw your way, brick and mortar. Do you have people coming to your office, or you're doing most of your business from home? Like, what does that look like? Because that's interesting to a lot of people.
Yeah, for a long time, I mean, I think you remember, Chris. I mean, we've always done, or at least since 2018, we've done our own direct mail for mortgage protection, which has slowed down. But needless to say, between the size of the equipment and everything else, we have 3 cats at home. I mean, at some point, I told my wife, I'm like, look, I got to get an office. I just can't work from home anymore. And I wasn't working in the field. So there's that part of it. When I come to this office, I'm at work. So it's definitely a different feel, a different vibe. I think that it helps from a professional aspect, but especially doing Medicare and even auto. I definitely have quite a few clients that come to the office. I mean, I still do probably at least 80-90% of what I do over the phone, but people like to come to an office and come shake my hand and see me in person and believe that we're like not someone that's trying to scam them from who knows where,
Yeah, I think it's interesting to have these kind of conversations with people that do business, but with slightly different versions of the business. But in the end, if Paul Granen and the Granen agencies are going to succeed, it's going to be up to you, and nobody else is going to prevent you from that happening. And you're going to be the one that makes it happen. Any closing thoughts on your goals for the year?
I'm pretty excited about 2025. Actually, I feel very, very hopeful and optimistic. When it comes to even the mortgage protection aspect of it, I don't know. I just have this weird sense that it's going to get a little bit better, and I'm hoping so. But also, my wife is actually in the process of getting her PNC license, which she's going to help take on a lot of the personal auto, so that I can just funnel leads to her and have her really work on that to free me up to do other things. Because honestly, it takes up a lot of time. Doing a little recruiting, have a few people coming on in different arenas. Some are more on the Medicare side, some are more on the life side. So I'm kind of excited about that too. I think I've definitely got some goals in mind, some numbers that I want to hit on the personal lines business as well as everything else. So feeling pretty good about it.
Adam, any closing thoughts or questions you want to throw Paul's way?
Let's see. Maybe, I don't know. You just recently got into auto insurance. I mean, the only thing I think about is just how people's rates have gone up so much over the last year or two. And I don't know if that was an issue with people of yours. Maybe you didn't run into that because you're just writing new policies now. But I mean, has that been an issue when it comes to sales, just the high premiums on a lot of these auto policies?
Well, I mean, so just to remind you of where I am, I'm in Louisiana. So we have the most expensive auto insurance rates. And homeowners insurance around.
It's
And
because
I'll
you're
tell you
building a
that it's
swamp.
very,
It's
what's
like
that?
you're insuring a swamp.
Oh my God. It's, you know, so, and that makes things really, really difficult when it comes to getting appointments, especially on the homeowner side. But as far as auto, I mean, obviously, hey, the premium's kind of nice, but I'm fortunate being independent because more often than not, quick example, I mean, even Progressive, you know, people say, hey, I have Progressive. And I'll say, well, do you have Progressive Direct or do you have an independent agent? When's the last time your auto's been quoted? They haven't gotten a quote in 3 years. More often than not, I can quote somebody and save them a bunch of money. So, you know, there's that, but still, people, it's crazy. It's definitely a different world. 6 months from now, somebody's going to call me and they're going to complain because their auto went up 2%. And I'm like, you really should feel blessed right now, okay? Because everybody else's is going through the roof. So it can be challenging, but I think it's how you handle it, you know, just be honest with people and tell them what's up. And nobody wants to hear it, but I just say, look, unfortunately, this is the climate that we're in. And especially in the New Orleans area, where if you drive 5 blocks, you're going to see 16 attorney billboards and everybody's suing everybody. And it's crazy, man, you know?
Yeah.
It's an interesting place.
I had a lady complaining about her PDP recently, and I'm like, man, it's the law. Like, legally, you have to have this, or you get assessed a penalty. There's nothing sexy about it. It works pretty good. It costs a little bit of money, but I got no room to argue about on it. It is what it is, kind of thing. And just like you're saying, you're honest and human with them, and that's all you can be at the end of the conversation.
I quoted a lady auto in Oregon, and she was freaking out because the 6-month premium, and we're talking top level, high liability limits and everything else, full coverage, was like $300 for 6 months. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay, so if I take you and transplant you here, it's going to be $1,800 for 6 months. So you should really be happy.
Yeah.
People don't understand. It's insane here, you know?
Well said. Well, on that note, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, Paul. Those of you that are watching today, please, we gifted these interviews to you, from top industry professionals to local business owners building their business one day at a time. All we ask in return is to engage in the content we've created for you, so other people that may not even know it exists are shown it across social media. Paul, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.